Even with the shit show that was 2020, the year still had some absolute cracking games get released, and it was also the year where long anticipated and long in development games finally came out to mixed opinion and review. It was also the year where several remakes or remasters came out and which genuinely surprised me with their quality. So here's the disclaimer stating, I have not played every game to come out this year of course, plus I haven't been able to get a PS5, so the likes of Demon's Souls doesn't even get the chance to make the list. And I haven't had a chance to delve into the enormity of Wasteland 3 or experience Half-Life Alyx for example. But fear not, as there are always more games that can make the list but can't. But I had a great time with all of these games and also have reviews of some of them too. This isn't a top 10 or 20 list for example, as I've only included games I thought deserved to be here the most. Not simply choosing games to meet the number, but if you like the video, then please like, share on Twitter or Reddit for example, comment, subscribe, and let's check out which games stood out for me this year. Kicking off at number 11, we have the game that's not really a game, but is a game, but not really, and it's Dreams on the PS4. Less of a game and more of a set of tools, this release is still highly impressive all these months later. Whether you want to just sit down for a few hours and discover new games that people have created, or maybe you want to dive into the creative tools on offer and try making something for yourself, Dreams is a great place to start for anyone interested in creating a video game. It will take some time to learn the ins and outs of it, so some dedication is required, but it is truly stunning what some talented people have managed to create within this piece of software. It has been some months since I've returned to the game, but it deserves to be on many Game of the Year lists, as what it sets out to achieve, it does it just so successfully. Plus there really aren't a lot of other titles like this out there, especially on consoles. If this digs its claws into you, then you might not even want to wake up. At number 10, we have The Last of Us Part 2, a game many would want higher on the list and others which wouldn't want it on the list at all. I was in the camp of those who not so much didn't like the story, I didn't like how it was told with the constant flashbacks and flash forwards, changing characters both past and present. But the other issue was that I didn't really care all that much about the new characters, and any time where Joel and Ellie were together just made me want that game instead. The reason why the game did in the end make the list was the good, brutal gameplay and the stunning environments and visuals, and there were times where the combat was incredibly intense. The small amount of flashbacks between Joel and the younger Ellie just solidified that that was the game I was most after. But there is still a lot to like about The Last of Us Part 2, from a technical and gameplay standpoint. Plus the dialogue and voice acting is excellent. Before release, I thought this would have been a lot higher on the list, but it wasn't meant to be. Next at number 9, we revisit New York in Spider-Man Miles Morales. Slightly more than a glorified DLC, this continued on with the fun combat system from the first game, but obviously following a different Spider-Man this time around. The city itself gets flipped over to winter, so everything is snow covered with snowflakes falling everywhere, and it's in stark contrast to what we had in the first game, and it's great. It looks and performs awesome, and that's just on the PS4 Pro, which I played it on. Some marks get taken off as it's nowhere near as long as the 2018 game, but it's still a damn good time even when you are roaming around the same areas. There is still some side content included which extends the playtime should you want to, even though I find it strange and ridiculous that any citizen can now contact Spider-Man directly should they need help. But anyway, that aside, if you like the first game, then you'll love this and you know what you're getting before you even pick up the controller. Up at number 8, we have the first of the remakes, and it's Mafia Definitive Edition. I haven't played this game since the original first came out, and whilst I liked it back then, I never went back to it. But with this remake, I almost couldn't put it down from the moment I started until the final credits roll. From its gorgeous world and visuals to its stellar soundtrack, voice acting and story, Mafia is a remake that captures what made the original so loved, but improves on it in several areas, including more options for more types of gamers, such as making it more arcadey and less sim-like when it comes to committing crimes and the police being called on you. It is a linear narrative set in a large open world. No map full of icons and side quests to do. It's story and character focused, and it's much better for it. Next up at number 7, we have Tony Hawk 1 and 2 Remake, and this is where many gamers get to revisit some classics from 2 decades earlier. But not only do we get to replay a couple of updated versions, we get to play these classics which have been stunningly remade from the ground up for modern day hardware. The Tony Hawk remakes brings across everything that made the games great, but but now we get to experience them with much better animations, perfect draw distances, enhanced environments, the incredible soundtracks, and all capped off with a smooth 60 frames a second frame rate. These are the games you may know and love, and they don't have a huge amount of content, but you may have the memories flooding back as you grind on rails and do kickflips as you play this incredibly made game. There aren't too many skating games around these days, but the Tony Hawk remakes are definitely worth checking out. Coming in at number 6, we have Immortals Fenyx Rising, and it's always good to see new IP come swinging out of the gate with such a memorable game. Coming from the Assassin's Creed Odyssey team, this vibrant and colourful adventure into Greek mythology is loaded with enough missions, quests and collectibles to keep you busy for a good chunk of time, but not a bloated and ridiculous amount of time. And yeah, I'm looking at you, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Fenyx Rising doesn't stray too far from the Ubisoft formula, but it's loaded with charm and humour. And you are never far from fighting enemies, collecting resources to upgrade yourself, solving puzzles and taking on dungeons, or just flying around and taking in this beautiful visual design from up above. Like I said, it isn't breaking new ground and it's obvious what the influences are, but when it's this gorgeous and fun to play, then it won't bother you one bit. Taking up the number 5 spot, we have Ori and the Will of the Wisps, another game which stays as far away from realism as you can get, and what you end up with is a stunningly gorgeous game which has a fantastic use of colour and visual effects plus smooth animations. As long as you weren't playing at launch where there were some technical issues, Ori runs like a dream now, and if you're playing on the Xbox Series X, then you can experience it at 6K, downscaled to 4K, or even at 120 frames per second if your TV supports it. You wouldn't think this game could look any better, but prepare your eyes to cry tears of joy. With more moves to unlock than the original game, Ori and the Will of the Wisps took an already great game and improved on it in all areas, including the story. It solidifies the series as something truly special, and apart from impressing you visually, it may even hit a spot and make you feel feelings. Cute, sad, happy, beautiful, and all the rest. This game is excellent and it screams quality. Up next at number 4, we have Final Fantasy VII Remake, and for this to rank so high from someone who isn't a huge fan of Final Fantasy is saying something. An overall beautiful looking game with fast and smooth combat which will fill your screen with lighting effects as you take on a whole host of enemies and bosses with your oversized sword. More of an action adventure than a deep RPG, this lengthy campaign delivers enough to bring in new fans such as myself, but also satisfy those who consider the original to perhaps be one of the greatest games of all time. Final Fantasy VII Remake has a wonderfully realised world with a memorable cast of characters with an intriguing story where I wanted to know what happened next. Apart from some very average side quests and a main character who is a bit of a dickhead at times, this remake was just excellent, and I look forward to the second part, which hopefully will be here sooner rather than later. Kicking off the top 3, we have Doom Eternal, and if you want a nice, relaxing, slow-paced adventure, then this game is here to knock that right out of you. Doom Eternal is a fast-paced and almost non-stop ride through dismemberment and bloodshed. You'll be chainsawing enemies in half, breaking their bones and shoving it back through their eye socket. Apart from its platforming sections that I actually enjoyed, Doom Eternal just never lets up and proves that the old school shooter that hugely contributed to giving birth to the genre is still so damn good today. With excellent enemy, weapons and environmental designs, all of which look fantastic on consoles and with a silky smooth frame rate as well. Doom Eternal improved on the 2016 game for myself and deserves to be on many Game of the Year lists. It's that damn good. If you haven't played it yet, then I highly recommend that you do, even if you have to make a deal with the devil. Fantastic game. Coming in at number 2, we have CD Projekt Red's controversial Cyberpunk 2077. The game has been plagued with bugs and performance problems from the base Xbox One and PS4 through to high-end PCs, and this is the game many are probably yelling at the screen that it has no means being here, whilst others will be thinking it's deserved. But of course, this is my list and it gets on it. This next part won't sell the game at all, but from freezes, frame rate issues and crashing, plus numerous issues involving AI and its almost total lack of intelligence and erratic behaviour from NPCs and cars, for example. But despite these issues, some of which I did have, I still couldn't put Cyberpunk 2077 down, and it was the game where I put the most amount of hours into over the shortest amount of time. I'm completely engrossed in this future world, even with its issues, but I see it as more of an action-adventure game with some stealth elements, as opposed to an all-out engrossing deep RPG where decisions actually matter. From the very solid gunplay and hacking abilities to the excellent story, characters and voice acting, all of which to extend to some excellent side quests as well. Cyberpunk 2077 has a lot to love, and hopefully the issues will be ironed out so it can become what it can be. It comes loaded with interesting weapons such as sniper rifles, pistols and shotguns, and vehicles, all of which drive differently to each other, and the different builds that players can focus on to mix up the gameplay, even if the life paths are quite shallow. The release of the game may go down in history as one of the worst launches for such an incredibly high profile game, but I'm still enjoying the hell out of it. But also wanted to say that it isn't the greatest thing ever, but nor is it the worst, despite what both sides of the discussion would like you to think. But regardless, Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be remembered many different ways long into the future. And that brings us to number 1, and the top spot goes to Sucker Punch's incredibly beautiful and memorable Ghost of Tsushima. For someone who wasn't anticipating this game, well, not really at all, I still decided to check it out on launch day, and so glad that I did. Ghost of Tsushima is a reason I don't pay attention to review scores, because this was ranked nowhere near the top of the best games of the year overall. But for me, this is the pinnacle of what 2020 had to offer. Gorgeous and colourful open world, great story and protagonist, incredibly fun and deep combat system which also made you feel like you were slicing and dicing through your enemies. The minimalist HUD just drew me into the world even more, plus the way you could follow foxes to items and secrets, and how the wind guided you to your objectives. Not huge additions on paper, but when you play the game it just adds to the immersion, and you stop thinking you're playing a video game and you're just immersed in this beautiful world with its organic exploration, and discover its engrossing story. Combat complete with different stances and standoffs never got old, which is so hard to do over such a long campaign. Plus the well done side quest you could be involved in as well. In a year where so much focus was put on Cyberpunk and The Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima combines so much of what I love about action games and RPGs and put it all in one game. Then they surprised everyone by releasing the multiplayer component of Ghost of Tsushima Legends, and proceeded to show they could do a loot-based game, not only for free, but better than many others who solely focus on that. Ghost of Tsushima was the best game released this year, and it sent the PS4 out on an incredibly high note. Sucker Punch should be extremely proud of their effort, and I can't wait to see what they do next, and if in some way this series can continue. Ghost of Tsushima wins the 2020 Game of the Year and will long be remembered for how great it is, especially when many more games pick it up on sale over the years and see just how fantastic it is. So there's my top games of the year, and surely there are some you feel deserve should make the list and others that don't, but each of these offered something more and made 2020 an excellent gaming year, and certainly a memorable one with everything that's been going on. Be sure to let me know what games would make your list or the best one you've played this year, as I read all the comments and respond as well. But please like the video, share it around on the likes of Twitter and Reddit, and subscribe for more content. But with that, I'll see you on the next video.